I never thought a lazy Sunday could change everything. The apartment buzzed softly with the hum of the television, the faint clatter of controllers hitting the couch, and Liam's easy laughter filling the air. We'd spent the better part of the afternoon battling each other in a ridiculous wrestling game, talking trash, losing track of time the way we always did. Living together for the past year had blurred the lines between friend and family, comfort and something less easily named. Liam, with his reckless grin and stupidly charming dimples, shoved me playfully when I won a match he swore was rigged. "Rematch," he challenged, lunging at me. Before I could react, he tackled me onto the couch, our bodies colliding in a tangle of arms and laughter. For a moment it was just noise, heat, and the familiar roughness of friendly competition. But then something shifted. His hand brushed my side, his breath was warm against my neck. I froze, suddenly hyper-aware of how close he was, how his weight pinned me down, how my heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Liam laughed again, oblivious, and rolled off me, sprawling across the couch without a second thought. To him it was a joke. To me it was the moment I realized I wasn't just imagining things anymore. I sat up quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded wrong in my own ears. My skin tingled where he had touched me, and I hated myself for noticing. I hated how natural it had felt, how much a part of me didn't want it to end. Liam grabbed a soda from the floor, tossing me one without looking, his mind already back on the game, as if nothing had happened, as if everything hadn't just changed for me. I watched him out of the corner of my eye, memorizing the easy slope of his smile, the way he absent-mindedly tapped his fingers against the can. I wondered how long I had been fooling myself, pretending that the late-night talks, the accidental touches, the way he always saved the last slice of pizza for me, were just part of being roommates, not something heavier, something unspoken. Panic prickled at the edges of my mind. Was I reading too much into it? Was I about to destroy the best friendship I'd ever had because I couldn't keep these feelings buried where they belonged? I cracked open the soda, taking a long, unnecessary sip, hoping the cold would shock some sense back into me. Across the room, Liam grinned, oblivious to the war inside my chest. "You're awfully quiet for a guy who just won," he teased. I managed a crooked smile. "Just tired," I lied. It was easier than telling the truth, that a simple wrestling match had unearthed something I wasn't ready to face, something I couldn't even name yet. But deep down I knew the truth wasn't going to stay buried for long, and that terrified me. The days after that afternoon felt different, though I tried desperately to pretend they didn't. I still joked with Liam, still laughed at his bad impressions, and let him steal fries off my plate. But inside, something was unraveling. Every glance lingered too long. Every casual touch sparked a pulse of electricity I couldn't control. I hated myself for it. I hated how effortlessly he moved through my space, through my life, completely unaware of the hurricane he stirred. Inside me, I started pulling away without meaning to. I stopped sitting so close on the couch. I kept my hands busy when we talked, fiddling with bottle caps or my sleeves, anything to avoid the temptation of reaching out. Liam noticed. Of course, he noticed. His eyes, usually bright and teasing, started to narrow in quiet confusion whenever I made another flimsy excuse to avoid movie nights or weekend hangouts. One evening, I heard him in the kitchen, talking to Mark, a mutual friend who dropped by occasionally. Their voices floated down the hallway, easy and unaware of my presence. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the words caught me like a hook. "Evan's been weird lately," Liam said, his voice light but tinged with something uncertain, like distant. "I don't know, maybe he's just stressed." Mark laughed it off, but the words lodged in my chest, a dull ache settling behind my ribs. Distant. Weird. Was that all he saw? Was that all I had become? I stayed in my room that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly everything had gotten so complicated. There was a time when Liam was just my best friend, my anchor in the chaos of college life. Now, he was the epicenter of a storm I couldn't escape. And the worst part was, he didn't even know it. The next morning, I found him at the table scribbling notes for an assignment. He looked up, his face lighting up the way it always did when he saw me, and for a heartbeat, I forgot about the distance I was putting between us. For a heartbeat, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were still okay. "Morning," he said, pushing a cup of coffee toward me. "Morning," I mumbled, taking the cup and sitting across from him, careful to keep the table between us. I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to just spit it out, confess everything, the way he made me feel, the way one stupid wrestling match had cracked something open inside me that I couldn't fix. But the fear of losing him kept the words lodged in my throat. So, I sipped my coffee, pretending everything was fine, while every second stretched tighter and tighter around my chest. Liam smiled at me, oblivious, and I smiled back, a little too tightly. Deep down, I knew the clock was ticking. Sooner or later, something was going to give, and when it did, nothing between us would ever be the same. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, one of those easy routines that had once felt like second nature. Liam ordered pizza, queued up a movie he knew I liked, and sprawled across the couch, tossing me a blanket like always. For a moment, it almost felt normal again, comfortable, safe. I told myself tonight would be different. Tonight, I would tell him the truth. Not in some grand, dramatic way, just quietly, honestly. I couldn't keep pretending, and I couldn't keep bleeding silently. While he stayed clueless, I rehearsed the words over and over in my head as the movie played, waiting for the right moment. But life, I realized too late, rarely waits for your perfect moment. Halfway through the film, Liam paused it, stretching and grabbing a soda from the floor. He leaned back, grinning, and said almost casually, "Hey, I meant to tell you, I'm kinda seeing someone." The words hit harder than any punch I could have prepared for. I blinked, forcing my mouth into some semblance of a smile. "Oh? That's cool. Who?" He shrugged, sheepish. "Kayla, from our psych class. We've been hanging out for a few weeks. Didn't want to make it a big deal until I knew it was, something real." Kayla. I remembered her. Bright laugh, effortless charm, the kind of person who fits seamlessly into any room. The kind of person Liam deserved. I nodded, pretending. My chest wasn't caving in. "I'm happy for you, man," I said, my voice so steady it surprised even me. He grinned wider, relieved, like he'd been worried I might react badly. The thought twisted in my gut. The rest of the night passed in a blur of static noise. I couldn't focus on the movie, couldn't laugh at the jokes he made, couldn't even feel the couch beneath me. All I felt was the gaping wound in my chest, raw and unseen. In the days that followed, I became an expert at pretending. I congratulated him when he mentioned dates, teased him about texts he tried to hide, listened to him talk about her like it didn't rip something vital out of me every time. I told myself this was what friends did. I told myself I should be happy if he was happy, but I couldn't lie to myself forever. Every time he smiled at a text that wasn't from me, every time he cancelled plans because of her, it felt like another thread snapping between us, and he didn't even notice. I spent more nights out, finding excuses to be anywhere but home. I came back late, long after he'd gone to bed, slipping into the apartment like a ghost. I answered his questions with short, hollow words. He started to notice the silence, the distance, but he didn't understand why. Until the night he cornered, Me in the kitchen, frustration simmering in his eyes. "What the hell's going on with you lately?" he demanded. "Why are you acting like you don't even care?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Only the crushing weight of everything. I'd never dared to say. For a long moment, the kitchen felt too small, the air too heavy. Liam stood there, his arms crossed, waiting for an answer I wasn't sure I could give. My heart hammered against my ribs, desperate to escape the truth pressing against my lips. I looked at him, really looked, and realized there would never be a perfect moment to say it. There was only now, messy and terrifying. "I care too much," I said, the words raw and shaking. "That's the problem." Confusion flashed across his face, followed by something softer, something almost vulnerable. "What are you talking about?" I forced myself to meet his gaze. I'm not just your roommate. I'm not just your friend. I tried to be, I wanted to be, but somewhere along the way I broke off, the words twisting in my throat. "I fell for you." The silence that followed was unbearable. Liam just stared at me, his mouth slightly open like he didn't know how to breathe. I waited for him to laugh, to tell me it was ridiculous, to pack up everything we had with a single careless word. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low and hoarse. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were happy," I whispered. "Because you found someone who could give you everything you deserve, and it's not me." His hand twitched at his side, like he wanted to reach for me but didn't know if he should. I backed away before he could decide, the fear of rejection gnawing through every bone in my body. "I'm sorry," I choked out. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I just couldn't stop it." Liam dragged a hand through his hair, frustration flashing across his face. "You idiot," he muttered under his breath, and before I could even react, he closed the distance between us in 2 strides. His hands framed my face, rough and trembling, and then he kissed me, fierce, desperate, like he'd been holding it back just as long as I had. For a second, I froze, too stunned to move. But then everything inside me shattered and I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of fear, longing and hope into it. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine, breathing hard. "It was always you," he said, voice cracking. "I was just too stupid to see it." Tears stung my eyes, but I laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound that felt like release. "What about Kayla?" He shook his head. "I was trying to move on from something I didn't even realize I wanted. But it was never real, not like this." The weight that had been crushing me for weeks lifted, replaced by something terrifying and beautiful. Hope. We stood there, tangled in the messy beginning of something neither of us had expected, but both of us had needed for far too long. Nothing about it was perfect, nothing about it was easy, but for the first time in a long time, it was real. And it was ours.